It has been 100 years since we last welcomed travelers across our borders. 100 years since new stories reached our ears. 100 years. The world has changed around us. All of us are cast adrift. But you, Chronicler, you are the answer. You will help reconnect the world. You will step out into the wilds and see what has changed. You will find the new paths, the hidden ways, the lost monsters and forgotten friends. You are our best hope. You are a Mappa Muppi Chronicler.
Hello and welcome to Science and Sorcery. My name is Sam and I'm part of the team here at Science and Sorcery. I'm joined by my wonderful colleague Khalil. How are you doing, Khalil?
Hey, I am actually really excited about this show. I've been looking forward to this ever since we had the first conversations about it. Just the system that we're going to get into and just the monster creation aspect of it tickles all the best bones in my body.
So the game that we're going to be talking about is a game that has just launched on Kickstarter today. It is Mappa Muppi, which is an exploration and ecology RPG. Yeah, I pointed the wrong way, it's up there, you can see the logo there. It is a wonderful, fantastic game by the folks over at 3 Sail Studios, which we are so delighted to be talking about their game today. Ever since I originally heard about this game, I've immediately wanted to run to play it because it ticks so many boxes for me. I'm a zoologist by background, so anything that is going to delve into ecology, I'm straight there. It's a non-combat game. I get really bored in combat games, and just the chance to try and bring something from the real world into a TTRPG is really exciting. And
I can vouch for the fact that Sam has not shut the hell up about this game for months.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot about games in on our channel group chat, and so I was just like, oh cool, yeah, it's another cool game that I won't have time to check out. And then as soon as I saw a little bit more of it at the at Dragon Meet, and then when we had a conversation with some of the people from 3 Sails, smitten. I completely understand why Sam wouldn't shut up about it.
So if you're watching this and you haven't gone and backed it, keep this running and go to the link that's in the chat and go back it. And if you need to back it at the minimum for now, then that's fine, but highly worth it. What we're going to do over the next little bit is talk about the making a monster or making a creature aspect of the game. This game is as we said, it's an ecology and exploration RPG. You take on the role of a chronicler from the Mappa Muppi Institute, who's sent out into the world to kind of like catalogue the creatures and the monsters that are out there. The
and
world
this is a
has...
world.
Oh yeah, on you go.
Sorry, this is a world that is kind of loosely based on ours in terms of geography, but in terms of chronology. The reason that these explorers and ecologists and scientists are being sent out into the world to study it is because there have been some magical calamities and natural kind of upheavals that have kind of locked people out of the wilderness for a long period of time. And this game happens when those have been lifted, those like etheric storms and crazy environmental effects have died down enough for people to go back out into the wilderness and reconnect with it and relearn what is there.
And this is an ecological disaster that is known amongst the people within the world as the Flux. And there's definitely a lot of parallels with some of the things that we're seeing happening in our world, but we're not going to talk too much about that. But it might come into what we talk about in the game. It all takes place within the world of ecumen. So everything from now on is an ecumenical matter, Khalil, all the way through this. And there are 4 continents within this world that are bound together. And the recent history of the world is being written from the point of view of Ivasu, and a humble Barbecia far on the western coast of the continent. This is what you see when you're looking at the rulebook. We've been really excited to get a chance to look at the book.
So Ivasu is roughly kind of analogous to kind of Eurasia.
And a little tiny bit of North Africa.
Yeah,
like,
so you've got kind of everything
Sub-Sahara.
from Western Europe all the way to Eastern and Southeastern Asia, and South Asia, kind of all across kind of the everything in between, and the Middle East, and yeah, a little bit of North Africa.
But specifically, no Britain. There's no analogy for Britain.
Take me there. Also, I think it's important to note that while this world, in terms of its geography, is inspired by the real world, and there are peoples and cultures that inhabit these places, any reference to the people of this world is not necessarily a direct kind of reference to the analogous location or people in the real world. So from here on, we're talking about Ivasu.
The game itself, yeah, the world that exists within there. But what we wanted to do was talk about how you could create some of the things that you might go out and find within these worlds, the monsters and creatures that exist.
Because there are some incredible monsters that come with the rulebook and with the settings, and they're all tied to different aspects of location and culture and history and ecology. But it's always fun to bake your own, right?
I mean, what we want is like a full encyclopedic bestiary, and that's like what I want to see by the end of all of this, and that we can possibly do. So having the chance to create our own and build our own, like as soon as we were pitched that idea, straight away, let's do that. So we're going to talk about a couple of the ones that we've come up with. Both Khalil and I have 2 ideas each that we're going to share. We're going to talk about what the creature is, what the lore surrounding it is, why we wanted to do that, some of the behaviours you might look for. When you go looking for these creatures, you're looking for behaviours to find out even more about them, and the skills that you have as a chronicler can be used to try and get those behaviours out. But you also need to be careful that you don't go in the wrong direction, because that might spook the animal or the creature or monster that you're engaging with.
So for example, if a creature doesn't like being touched and you were to try to learn about it through tactile contact, that would worsen your relationship with the monster and thus make it harder or more dangerous to study. Stuff like that.
Just like really the same with any sort of wild animal that we'd come into contact with. Like, don't go touching wild stuff if you don't know what you're doing. So, without further ado, should we crack into what we've made and why?
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. So, the creature that I've picked first is based on a real life creature that means a lot to me, that I'm really excited about. And this is called the Heather to Trail. Now, the Heather to Trail is scarcely seen, but etched into the memory of anyone who's fortunate enough to meet it. It's small, but undeniably powerful. It's a bird that stands just 3 feet tall, which sounds quite big for a bird, but on the scale of the other creatures that can appear in this game, it's quite small. It bears plumage that shimmers with kind of black and green and purple iridescence, and has these piercing black eyes that some who've seen it say holds a wisdom older than the forest that it exists within itself. And some people believe that the Heather to Trail is a fairy spirit bound in feathers, and it lures the unwary deeper into ancient woods with melodic calls. And other people claim it's a sacred guardian of sacred places, a creature of just pure magic that appears only to those that it deems worthy, or doomed. And these displays are said to enrapture the audiences who see it, as if the very air around you becomes tinged with magical energy. And some have even said that such is the rarity of this sight that to see one is to feel like you might have just witnessed the divine itself.
Wow.
So
what real world creature inspired this majestic, magical, fatalistic bird?
Well, there's no Britain in this game, but this creature is one that is incredibly rare on the British Isles, but also exists across the European continent. This is the capercaillie.
What's a capercaillie?
It's a large grouse-like creature. It builds spaces in which it performs, as groups of males will come together into what's called a lick, where they will almost dance and create this bubbling call in which to attract females. This happens in Scotland, for example, in Caledonian pine forest, and the numbers of them are reducing and reducing, and they're impacted by kind of habitat degradation, predators taking them out, and they're very vulnerable to disturbance. I love them. I think they're so weird and exciting and rare. The chance to see one is something that I would love to have. I've never seen one, but also knowing that if I ever knew where one was, I shouldn't go there because they're so disturbance impacted.
I love the idea of these performers that are a bit shy.
Exactly.
They're just practicing their dance routines, and they don't want anyone to see them apart from the intended recipient.
Exactly. But I wanted to make this bird just because it's always seemed to me like such a... it almost feels mythological, you know? I know that they're out there, and I know other people who've seen them, but I don't think I'll ever get to see one, even though I live in a country where they exist, for now at least, because they're really quite heavily impacted by various different threats.
So what would an encounter with this bird, what's it called again?
The Heather to Trail.
What would an encounter with the Heather to Trail, what might it feel or look like? Where do they live? What would the journey be like? How might you approach it?
So when I was pitching this idea in my own head, I thought of if you've ever played Pokemon, the Pokemon Celebi, who is an extremely rare legendary Pokemon, of which there's only really one in existence, a forest spirit who has this reputation for being malevolent and scary, but actually on closer inspection is very gentle and very caring and wants to look after the space that they exist within. I just noticed I've got a Pokemon in my t-shirt, completely not on purpose. Interactions with Heather to Trail would be fleeting and unlikely, and you would expect that if you were wandering through, say, like a quite heavily dense forest, probably on quite hilly ground, that you may hear what sounds like bubbles popping, like bubble wrap. You'd hear that kind of popping noises, and you would hear that fully before you start to see anything. Would almost be kind of ethereal and ghost-like, I'd imagine.
That is such an evocative combination of like the setting and the call. I can imagine it's quite misty, you know, around.
I want to see them like early morning.
Yeah,
the sun's just peeking through the trees, and I know that some people who have seen the real life counterpart do say that if you hear it, it seems to come from all directions. Like it might come from one specific direction if you follow it, but when you first hear it, the call of this creature seems to come from all around.
That's so mystical.
So
what are the with the monsters? You tend to have around 8 or so behaviors or aspects of their biology that are kind of up for discovery in the game. So what are the behaviors of the Heather to Trail?
The first one that I wanted to pick on was the bubbling song. That kind of bubbling, popping noise that you would probably hear more so than any of the other behaviors. So that one, I think, would always be the first sort of signs that you would get from this monster. If you were lucky enough to be able to spot them, you'll have moved through their cryptic camouflage. So they exist within kind of darker forest with that iridescent black and purple and a little bit of green that's kind of mixed in there as well, so quite camouflaged amongst the trees. But when it does come into view, it's quite dazzling. So similar, if you've ever seen a magpie move right into that particular bit of light shining, you'll get the colour.
That iridescence.
Through. It's such a beautiful thing to see. If you're lucky enough to get to watch them for a bit longer, you may be able to watch their performing lek when they all come together and dance. And the way that this operates is they will move their tail feathers out wide, raise their head to the sky, and start to call and walk in a kind of circular motion as they do so. It's quite hypnotic to witness. But if you're too close or cause them a fright, they are an incredibly territorial creature as well, and so will attack if provoked. But at the same time, they're also forgiving. So if you're able to
if you back off and give them some space,
or provide them with something that could perhaps allow them to calm, then they're likely to allow that to pass. And they
so
Xanax or juniper. So they're like a juniper grazer. So I've got like a very clear similarity between the real creature who like to graze on lower reached berries, juniper and blaeberries being the things that they'll really go for. And if you manage to get all the way through that and commune with them after watching that lek, you'll be able to see this quite elegant dance that comes through from this creature. So those are the 8. Territorial, the bubbling song. They like to eat juniper. They have a performing lek. They have this cryptic camouflage, dazzling feathers. They're able to forgive, but never forget. And an elegant dance that kind of brings it all out together.
Nice. I love the idea of creating a monster that isn't like monstrous in proportion. It's just wondrous in nature.
And sometimes those small things that can be missed are some of the best things to see. Both, I imagine, within this game and also the real world that we exist in. So that was part of that thinking. I mean, 3 foot for a bird is still quite big, but not in comparison to the scale of what other things you might see. But yeah, that's I love that animal and the chance to bring it into a game as its own monster. Immediately want to play it.
Yeah, I can't wait to encounter it somewhere. I was so torn trying to pick what creature to turn into a monster. I think that's kind of why I did too. But I'm really excited for the future expansions that are planned for other geographical regions, because I really wanted to make an Ai, but Madagascar or the rest of Africa isn't written yet. But
that big long finger,
it's on the way.
Creepy finger.
Also, I think it's important to mention actually that Mappa Mundi and the 3 Cell Studios, they've been developing these kind of geographical regions and monsters with like very meaningful cultural consultation as well. It's not just a kind of appropriative exoticism. It's had real input from real people with real connection to the all over the world.
Amazing having that chat with the team, and they're just very clear that was from the beginning thinking about that. So really great to see.
We didn't even need to ask.
Do it. No. More games need to do it. What about you? So what was it you made then?
So going from a 3-foot bird, let me introduce you to the Madu Madu. So the Madu Madu lives for 3 things: eat, rest, and play. A large ursine monster, it navigates its forest home with surprising grace, with its 8 long gangly limbs tipped in sharp claws. Its crinkled skin, like a mastiff, is covered in soft dark fur, save for a motile piggy porcine nose and a patch of gold fur on its face and chest that glow when it's happy. Despite its large size, it's larger than, like, about the size of a large van. The Madu Madu is a shy monster, preferring to spend its days sunbathing in the canopy with a full stomach, absorbing energy from the sunlight to aid its digestion. On the rare occasions when a person has come face to face with the Madu Madu and neither has immediately fled, witnesses report being equal parts intrigued and unsettled by its remarkable intelligence and its propensity to mimic human speech and facial expressions.
Right, so many questions. So, first of all, 8 limbs.
Yeah, so the inspiration for this monster is the sun bear. So this is a type of bear that lives in Southeast Asia, in the forests out there. And it's not a particularly big bear, but it does have quite long limbs, and it's an excellent climber. And I thought, why not give it 8? That makes it a little bit more monstrous, and it means that it can, like, kind of almost fly through the trees, because it has so many points of contact that, you know, it can just, its body can just kind of hove through. And sun bears, you might have seen, there was a story in the news a few years ago that some people were convinced that the sun bear in a zoo was just a guy in a suit, because, you know, they stand on their hind legs very regularly. It was waving at people, and because it has those long limbs, it has kind of near human proportions. It was waving at people, and that, I think, is partly related to its propensity to actually mimic human movements and even facial expressions. I added in the speech because I thought it made it a bit weirder.
what was the inspiration behind you actually choosing that one? Was there a connection that you have there, or
I love sun bears. They're weird and goofy looking. Like from a distance, they look absolutely gorgeous. They've got this sleek black fur with these like golden patches, and then they like. You get close, or I've never been close, but you see a closer picture, and they've got these kind of like real buggy eyes with blue irises that kind of like sometimes are like don't point in the same direction, and they have an incredibly long, relatively thin tongue that they use for getting honey and insects out of crevices and stuff like that. The Madu Madu has 8.
Wait, no, sorry. 8 tongues.
8 prehensile tongues that it generally uses for, sensing the environment around it and gathering food and stuff. But also sometimes we'll use in play, because the Madu Madu is a very playful monster. If you can build a rapport with it.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was going to ask then. In terms of that kind of playfulness, is it a kind of solitary living species, like similar to real life bears that generally
yes.
But yeah,
it lives solitarily, and it lives in the deep forest. So if you're, if the first you'll probably encounter of it is, you might see you hear like a creak of the thick branches in the canopy, and you might look up and see a big shadow just not really moving much, sunbathing up in the trees. Or you might hear its mimicry or something. Or if you're being particularly quiet, if you strike its curiosity, if it doesn't see you as a threat, it might come in and see what's up. It's not necessarily going to attack you. It's not going to initiate close contact, but it's highly intelligent. It wants to know and experience, but it also likes its space.
And what do the people that are close by to where this creature might be found generally think of this particular species? Do they have legends or stories, or are they scared of it? What's their kind of thinking there?
They are probably mostly scared of it because it is a big 8-armed bear. Most people probably run away, but there are anecdotes and stories and legends of people coming face to face with a Madu Madu and achieving some kind of, not enlightenment, but like a kind of an emotional or cognitive breakthrough through communing with this animal. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily a magic power that the bear has, but maybe it's a charismatic power that the bear has, that communing with this highly intelligent animal unlocks something in the perceiver. Which,
like, kind of analogous to real species in the real world that we exist in, that happens all the time as well, in terms of people's relationships to things that like have that kind of charismatic way of coming across, and how we as humans build that into our own understanding of them, both for good and bad. No, definitely. Something that we didn't mention with the Heather to Trial was around the threads that you can have for them. So
we should explain the concept of threads in this game.
So when you encounter any creature or monster, you have what are known as threads, which are ways in which the creature can present itself and its emotion and emotional state.
It's kind of like keeping track of, it's a metaphorical representation of the connection between you and this creature. So they can be intact, they can be frayed, or they can be severed.
Yeah. So if you do something to kind of piss the creature off, if it's an intact thread, you can start to fray it. And if you continue to break that relationship down, you can sever it. And you have both the kind of passive mode, where the creature is not necessarily in a situation where it might be already upset, or there's the aggressive mode, and where it can exist within those. So the Hellited Trowel would exist with 8 intact threads in its passive state. If it was aggressive, 4 intact and 4 severed, because it can be quite a territorial animal. But for the Madu Madu,
so for the Madu Madu, you definitely start off with 8 intact threads, because it at a passive state, because it's often sunbathing or eating. But in the kind of active or aggressive state, you've still got 4 intact threads, because it's not necessarily like primarily a hunter. It's not. It doesn't seek aggression. But you will have 2 frayed and 2 severed, because part of it might want to, use violence to defend itself, but also part of it might want to just disappear into the forest. And
which
even
is
despite its bulk,
do, right?
it really can just melt into the woods.
Yeah.
Which is very similar to IRL bears.
Yeah. They're both what you've described as a Madu Madu is odd and very intriguing. And real bears are also odd and intriguing, like all of them. All of them are all so individual and different and just weird. Such a cool group of animals.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are all the behaviours then that you would encounter if you were to come across the Madu Madu?
So, the first on the list is shy yet playful. And so you would, encounter that in the first relationship building stage of meeting this bear, this monster. It has keen smell, and this might be actually something that initiates the meeting or the encounter. You might have some food that it finds particularly enticing, and that might be what draws it close, or something like that. Excellent climber, so that means that, for example, if you were to try and track one down, you'd need to think vertically as well as horizontally. The next one is gluttonous. This thing likes to eat. And actually this leads into another mechanic that that creature design involves, which is that sometimes when you discover one behavior, it unlocks the discovery of kind of dependent subsequent behaviors. So once you've discovered gluttonous, there are 2 more that you can discover, which are omnivorous and 8 prehensile tongues.
Would you like to explain omnivorous for the audience who might not know?
Omnivorous means omni, all, vor, eat. It will eat pretty much anything that is edible. Just like a lot of bears, they will eat meat, fruit, honey, insects, all sorts of stuff. So this is something that really likes to eat, will eat pretty much anything that's edible, and uses 8 long, prehensile, tentacular tongues. Next up, we've got sunbather. And this might be how you find it, or it might be that, whilst you're interacting with it, or whilst you're studying it, it decides to take a snooze.
Can I ask, actually, because you mentioned it in your original description, was around sunbathing to help, to using the power of the sun for digestion. Is that literally it just sunbathes and it enjoys it, or does the sun play a mechanical role in that digestion?
I think for the Madu Madu, it is actually absorbing energy through its dark fur. And then that when it's happy, any excess energy kind of bioluminesces from its golden fur.
So weird, but so great.
I've put that down as joyous glow.
Nice.
Which I think is a nice balance to 8 prehensile tongues,
Yeah, it's like Eldritch horror, but with a smile.
And on the subject of horror, the facial and vocal mimicry is the last one. So, if it hears you singing, it might sing back. Or if you pull a funny face, it might like try and start a game with you, making faces or something like that. There's a lot of, I think, interesting ways that people can interpret how this works when they play with this monster.
I love it so much. Anything else you wanted to share? Just because we've got 2 more to share, and we could just talk about these 2 the whole time. But
no, let's keep it rolling. What's your next one?
My next one is called the Razvamaha.
Razvamaha.
And this is a creature with jagged black and gold fur that almost seems to shine like molten lava. And if you gaze upon its face, the eyes seem to burn like little embers. It has huge claws that are rumoured to be able to rend stone, and teeth that endlessly regrow, meaning that no prey is off limits, because it will just grow the teeth back if it breaks them. It is a creature with a hunger that drives it to pursue victims relentlessly, sometimes for weeks, and consumes them in their entirety. And there are rumours that say entire herds of grazing animals have been wiped from existence, leaving just a trail of blood and silence in its wake. And legends speak of the Razvamaha as a cursed immortal, a being of just pure destruction that devours endlessly but never knows satisfaction, and only the desperate will ever attempt to bargain with it. And to face this creature is to confront untamed, all-coming destruction. A force of nature that leaves nothing but desolation. Now this is based...
Wow. This is a wild vibe shift from like cutesy bear.
This is based on a real creature with several similar things around it. This is the Wolverine. So, large mustelid, part of the weasel family, but really big, really strong, and really able to take down much larger creatures than it is itself. And I just think that they are fascinating, and wanted to create it within this game.
Yeah, I love the idea of it's kind of like honey badger vibe, which is again another mustelid. It's like I'm not gonna bother getting big. I'm just gonna be real mean.
And also have legends surrounding them as well, that kind of make people think a lot more about ever approaching it. Whether it is the honey badger or the Wolverine. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, like, what sort of larger prey and how much larger does a Wolverine take on? Or will it fight attackers who are larger than it and eat smaller things? What's that vibe?
So, Wolverines are known to take down quite large ungulates. So, if you imagine the size of a Wolverine, they're around like Labrador size-ish, maybe a little smaller than that. But they'll take down caribou, so reindeer, large creatures. And that's what I envisage from the Razvamaha, which, should explain the name that I've come up with there, is Finnish for fat belly. So it sounds like this really destructive creature, but we're just calling it fat belly.
So what would looking for this creature be like?
Well, this kind of ties into some of the behaviours, but also specifically the shaping inspiration that I've included here. If you're looking at the game rules, you have what's called shaping, which any player can do and the GM can do at any point to try and build upon what you find within the game, whether it's interacting with a monster or part of the kind of traversal and exploration. But you would find deathly silence and if you're looking for this creature or in the area where you might find it, the air becomes still as though time itself has stopped. And you watch as a branch falls from a tree hitting against rocks and yet makes no noise. If you turn to speak to a companion, you'll both realise in shock that there's no noise passes your lips. And then you'll realise you're not alone, as the deathly silence kind of creeps alongside this creature. So that would be one of the first signs if you're not sure where to look for it, if you're not sure that it's there.
If you are unwise enough to look for it in the first place.
Exactly, yeah. If you are trying to follow tracks, then you might come across the behaviour of relentless pursuit. Something that the Razvamaha and also the Wolverine will do is run and run and run and run and not get tired. They are a predator that will chase until the prey cannot run anymore. And that is what you would see from this creature.
So how does that manifest in these behaviours?
So it would be endless tracks that seem to go on forever. And you would become incredibly tired as you're following along. But also, because of its gluttonous hunger, you might find eaten prey, and then the tracks continue, and then eaten prey.
And I guess
tracks continue.
The things that you would find are like, you know, a sploosh of like blood on the snow. Or what kind of terrain are we in?
So this is going to be kind of tundra. And
yeah. So like a sploosh of red on the like white tundra, and you know, maybe a couple of like hooves or horns left over, but like very little else. Very little else.
They will, and similarly with the Wolverine, will eat everything. And not just in the sense of they're not fussy, but they will eat the bones and take the whole thing and clean it out. They're gluttonous, but they're also, if you are able to watch them closely whilst feeding, you'll see what I've dubbed the ruinous maw. Incredibly strong jaws. They're able to crack through even the toughest of hides and the toughest of bones. Quite a terrifying creature. But also they're territorial. So they can be provoked. Their territories are huge. So it's unlikely that two individuals are going to come into contact with each other. And if they do, you don't want to be there to witness it. And they have a furious wrath that unlocks if you unlock tutorial. But they will also accept bargains. So bargain accepted is one of the last ones, which you could unlock after territorial or gluttonous hunger, because you might provide it with a meal and that would allow it to be bargained with. And the last thing that I have here is vitality. They are able to withstand a lot of physical hurt and damage and injury. So similar to Wolverine, similar to other mustelids, which are very hardy creatures, like the honey badger can be bitten by rattlesnakes and be fine, just has a sleep. Similarly with the Wolverine, they can be put through a lot. Similarly with the Razvamaha, they can experience a lot.
Oh, we're seeing a lot of where that Marvel name came from.
Exactly, yeah, they can just like deal with a lot of shit and get through it. So passively,
truly the monster of 2025.
Yeah. They would exist passively with 6 intact threads and 2 severed threads. And I thought if we were aggressive, because it is an aggressive creature, perhaps 2 intact and 6 severed. So really,
it flips into do not give a fuck mode.
Yeah, which just feels very real for the creature itself. Yeah, that's the Razvamaha.
I am equal parts fascinated and terrified.
I'd love to see like how people who'd never come across any of what we've chatted about dealt with having to look for this creature and seeing the signs of it and trying to just reckon with, we need to keep going because it's our job to chronicle what this thing is and learn about it, but also I don't want to get close to it because it's so terrifying.
And getting people out of the the traditional RPG mindset of like, oh, this is a scary, violent monster. Think of all the XP I'll get when I kill it.
Yeah.
No. This is something that you need to be scared of. And not in a, this might be hard to kill way, in a like, this is going to be hard to study and I might, not get through it.
Yeah. So those are the two that I have like fully rounded out. I have so many more thoughts and ideas of things I'd want to make, similarly to you with your II when the expansions come, or ways that like I really want to make a glass frog. Like I really want to make like a glass frog in this game, but like a really big one.
No.
Like a giant glass frog that judges people. That's my thoughts. What was your second one?
So my second one is, so when I realized that they had the Middle East, or analogous to, in this part of this world, I had to do something Palestinian. So I have made the Falstinia, which is, well, to call it a tree would be to do it a great disservice. This monster is an ecosystem in itself. It's an oasis of safety to myriad smaller creatures. Its deep roots are one with the soil. They draw nutrients up for consumption and provide a habitat for fungi and burrowing creatures, which then bury nutrients back into the ground. Falstinia's broad canopy provides shelter from sun, wind, and rain for resident and passing creatures. And it's filled with iridescent feather-petaled flowers, which mature into kind of pearlescent olive-like fruits. Intriguingly, Falstinia is always surrounded by a flock of shimmering birds that some say sing echoes of the song of creation. Although no one has yet observed the nests or young of this species. Wink. People in the surrounding areas do, however, tell stories of saplings sprouting from eggshells in the wake of forest clearing expeditions, or entire logging teams being chased out of the forest by swarms of birds, beasts, and bugs. So the inspiration for this monster is twofold, and they're both very closely tied to Palestine. One is the olive tree, a very hardy and long-lived tree that does form entire ecosystems and is an ingrained part of Palestinian culture, and the Palestine sunbird, which is the national bird of Palestine, and I urge you to Google it because it is absolutely gorgeous. It is kind of iridescent blue, green, and purple with this like delicate downward curved beak, and it's going from what your first creature, the heather tetrao, which was small for a monster, big for a bird. These birds are small for a bird. Oh, about right for a passerine bird. What people might learn, spoiler alert, so take your headphones off if you might want to play this monster. As is heavily implied in the description, this is actually a multi-stage life cycle of one organism. So these flowers, they develop into the olives, and then the olive hatches into the bird, and the birds will then fly off to find partners from another Falstinia tree elsewhere in the wilderness. They'll mate, they'll lay an egg, and then that will hatch into a sapling, and that will grow and start a new tree, a new community.
I mean, that's just like such a gorgeous concept for like something for people to grapple with, both in terms of within the game and outside of the game, I think, as well, like in terms of the way in which something comes from this one point and continues to thrive and continues to go and perseveres right? That's like it just continues to keep going. But feathered petals, Khalil, that's like there's something about that just like really set my teeth on edge.
They're not like a feather duster. They're
yeah.
They're kind of iridescent, smooth feathers. But yeah,
it's just something about it was like that. I don't know why, but it just felt very, very different and like hard for my brain to kind of reconcile that it would exist, and like, but I want to see it as well.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going for.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, you got exactly what you were trying to get. So what you said about like kind of logging like groups being chased out of forests and whatnot by not just by this individual organism itself, but also by other things that like live amongst its leaves and amongst its branches. And
yeah, because the tree stage of the life cycle is completely sedentary, which is the first of the behaviors. It's completely sedentary. It's a tree. It can't like swing its branches around or anything like that. It does kind of communicate and commune with the, you know, all the different species in the ecosystem that exists on the tree, but it's not generally an active doer in the ecosystem. But if the tree is threatened, then the tree will release pheromones. Sorry, the tree will release pheromones that signal that it is damaged, and this happens in normal plants as well. There are plants that will release a pheromone if a caterpillar starts munching on them, and that'll attract a wasp to kill the caterpillar. So this is a kind of an extension of that. And when the organisms that live on the tree realize that their home is under attack and under threat, that's when they collectivize and they mobilize to, you know, deal with whatever threat there is to the tree. And so as humans start to go back out into the wilderness, some of it is going to be, you know, studying organisms and writing stuff down. Some of it is going to be resource gathering. Some of it is going to be destructive to parts of the environment. And people are going to have to relearn that kind of holistic reciprocal relationship with nature. And so there's going to be times when they butt up against somewhere that nature will draw a boundary. Not a literal boundary, but like a behavior boundary. And so this is kind of the pushback from the wilderness.
I'm like genuinely fascinated by this whole concept. What other behaviors have we got here that we...
So we've got sedentary, symbiotic roots. So you've got all these kind of underground communities around the roots. Refuge to many. Community defense. And that unlocks after... Well, actually, it doesn't necessarily unlock after a community defense. Community defense, if you experience it first, that can unlock refuge to many. Refuge to many, if you experience that first, that can unlock community defense. There's flowering and fruiting. There is delicious nutritious, because if you do manage to get any of the iridescent pearlescent olives, they are very tasty and contain all sorts of nutrients that are good for all sorts of organisms. And avian larval form, which unlocks after flowering and fruiting. Oh, so does delicious nutritious.
Which again is just like a combination of words that's similar to the feathered petals, just makes me go, ugh, but yes.
And I really like, if we're just briefly chatting about the shaping inspirations, with this I really like the idea that people could encounter the bird form first, or they could encounter the tree form first. And so how you do that affects how you tell the story.
So there's so many different ways that this one individual organism could be interacted with. Meaning that you could interact with it multiple times in multiple different adventures and see a different stage.
Yeah, or you might be on an expedition, you might see the bird form and then later you might see the tree form, and you might not put two and two together until you learn a little bit about either of them, and then you start to draw that connection.
And though we should say, in terms of the way that this works within the game, is that Mappa Mundi has 3 phases that play generally goes through. So you're going to have your research phase, a journey phase, and an encounter phase, which can all happen in any order. There's no set way that you play it. And you might start to come up with some of these behaviours or some of these things about the organism in, say, the research phase, where you're trying to find out more about it, and then dive a little deeper in the encounter phase, where you actually come face to face with the individual organism or monster or creature that you come up against. What are people's relationships like with this particular organism? Is there a broad range of experience?
I think it very much depends on how you interact with it, because it's not going to approach you. It's a tree. But if you want to, take a nap in the shade, or if you want to take a few fruits or anything like that, then you will be kind of, the more time you spend there and the more respectfully you interact with it, the more you'll be kind of included in that wider ecosystem and community around it. If you come at it with an axe, then that will be a very different relationship.
Which is similar to like any way of interacting with wildlife and nature and communities and people, and just making sure that, well, it seems to be like a lot of the themes that kind of drive themselves right through this game as well, is what you've created with that creature that you put together. Khalil, we've only got 5 minutes left of the time, so a lot that we were meant to be here talking about. So what that can show you folks, if you're watching, is this game is great, and we've so many ideas for it. Like our team, like, who unfortunately haven't been able to make it to this chat, various levels of folks not feeling great. There's also a puppy involved,
the puppy is fine though.
The puppy's fine. Puppy's not unwell. It's just a puppy, and puppies take up time. We've had another creature that is based on mud skippers, which are those fish that can breathe on land and move between species. Do you want to say a quick thing about that?
There was a communal bird species as well. So very, very quickly, the mud skipper creature that Dagmar designed is the kind of an amphibious, all-seeing, slow-walking ambush predator who dwells in tunnels, hoards eggs, and acidifies the local environment. Lives in mangroves.
Love it. And the citadel bird, which is what Alex had worked on, was this, again, similar to the organism that you described, Khalil, has various different both life stages and also sexual dimorphic characteristics. So the males and the females present differently. So in the citadel bird, the queen is a huge flightless bird that bears the colony on their back. So all of the other smaller birds live within her large body. And there are courtiers, which are small but colourful males, and they are ones that communicate with an elaborate flowing song, gather nectar and berries, and much larger than these courtiers are the princes, golden but far fewer in number, and the queen's first prince is her mate, and she'll give birth to sons who'll later move off to find a queen. So it's this kind of colony-like interactions that you find in, say, like bees and ants, and similar but within birds, which is just so cool.
And I love the kind of anthropomorphic language projected onto it as well, the kind of the royal kind of citadel.
The way in which we would kind of engage with it, from the way that we would understand kind of human society coming into these animals, for better or for worse, but that's the way that we would like think about them.
But one of the wonderful things about Mappa Mundi as a game system is that it's going to be under an open license. So we are going to publish all of these monsters that you've heard about today, including the ones that we didn't get into properly in huge detail. So whether that is through 3 sales, or whether that is independently alongside the game, you will be able to access these game rules somewhere. If you follow us on our social media, then you'll be able to keep up with any announcements on that. In terms of announcements, as Sam said at the top of the episode, the Kickstarter is live now, if you're watching this at the date of transmission. So do check out the link in the chat. Go find out more about this really cool game. Get excited about it. Back it. This isn't one of those Kickstarters that you're going to back and then forget about it, and then 2.5 years later you get a parcel at your door. The game has been written, and so the Kickstarter is for production and distribution. So you should get it, they're saying, by June. So it'll be a quick kind of input reward cycle. Get those Pavlovian connections going. Also, if you want to find out more about how this game might go and what it might be like to play it, we're going to be running a one-shot adventure with one of these monsters on Monday the 17th of February, right here on Science and Sorcery at 7 PM. So come check that out as well. But you won't have to wait that long, because we are going to be raiding out to our good friends at Euphoria for a Mappa Mundi one-shot, original story from the wonderful folks over there. So do stick around, check them out, support them. They're wonderful. But until then, thank you so much. And big thanks to 3 Sales and Mappa Mundi. This has been a really cool collaboration. Be cool to each other, be cool to yourself, be cool to the world, be cool to animals.
Take care, folks, and stick around, because like we mean it right now. Right now, we're gonna raid over, and you can watch it right now. It's gonna be great. See you soon. Goodbye.